Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our first ever live edition of the Coach's Corner. We've done a few of these conversations so far with different coaches around the country. This is the first live edition, so I'm pretty excited to be joined by Coach George Capen, the associate head coach at Georgetown. George, thank you for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. I'm definitely excited to have a little dialogue and conversation, and hopefully it becomes valuable for a lot of people on the call.
Absolutely, yeah. So to give Coach Capen a quick introduction, Coach Cape is entering his ninth total season of coaching, about to start his sixth season at Georgetown. Cape played his college baseball at Holy Cross up here in Massachusetts, graduated from Holy Cross, played professionally with the Mariners, and then coached at Holy Cross, and now has moved down and is coaching out of DC at the Hilltop at Georgetown. A lot of really good experience, both as a player at these sorts of programs, these sorts of high academic programs, and then, nearing a decade of experience on the coaching side. An interesting kind of overlap of the playing career and the coaching career as well that we can certainly touch on in terms of a unique background and experience. But Coach Cape, thank you so much for joining us, and just really a lot of experience, a lot of depth of knowledge, and I would argue one of the more thoughtful college coaches that we have the pleasure of interacting with at camp. So really a pleasure to have you, and a really good resource for families. So to give some kind of brief overview of the evening, I have some kind of conversation points and questions that Coach Capen and I are going to kind of talk through. I also have the questions that people left when they signed up for the to attend live, and so I have some of those bucketed out that we can work into, and then we also will do a live Q&A. So at any point over the course of while we're chatting, if you have a question that comes to mind, fire it away in the Q&A section, and I'll be of the Microsoft Teams kind of like layout, and I'll be collecting those, and I'll kind of filter them, and I'll send them over to Coach Capen to answer. I do ask that if you have a question, we try to keep it kind of general for the audience. It's not like my son his name is X and his metrics are Y, and let's talk about him getting into Georgetown. You certainly can have that conversation with Cape later on, but I just want to make sure that we're kind of making the content geared for the general audience. So, George, one of the things that you and I have talked about, because this stemmed from us just kind of chatting. We were just having a long conversation at our camps in Southern California in June, and we were like, this conversation should be recorded. So here we are. So one of the things that we were talking about there that I think is really interesting is like the recruiting timing and changes that are kind of coming about. So I know that this summer looks a little bit different for rising seniors than it maybe has in the past. So what is the road ahead and timing look like for the class of 2026 from here through the fall? And then kind of after that, how about for the 2027s?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's a really good topic, especially like in the current landscape, because things have like nationally just shifted a little bit farther back than I guess you would say they historically were. Before some of these rule changes and happenings amongst college athletics and obviously specifically within college baseball. And because of that, I think, typically that summer before your senior year, really for a lot of guys, probably for the majority, felt like everything was in that summer, like everything was going to be riding on that. And if I perform, if I don't perform, you're a high school kid or you're a high school guy, and your buddies are getting offers or committing or whatever, and you feel this inherent pressure. I think you're going to see over the next couple months, that is going to continue to shift for this class and most likely for the 2027 class and 2028 class, to where like that fall is now mattering as well. And our process at Georgetown, we've never rushed it. We've never closed the class super early. To be honest, we really love having a spot or two still available in each high school class for that fall, which I know we'll kind of touch on, some of those topics later. But we've always loved having some room for those guys, just so we have an opportunity to really see everybody. And for us, the recruiting process is definitely not something that we rush, because when we're talking about bringing somebody into our family for 4 years, it's more than that, right? I mean, you're bringing somebody into your family and to represent your organization well beyond their playing years as an alum. And the flip side of that is obviously, the recruiting process being a two-way street, where we have all the boxes that we want checked, but the student and their parents and their family, they have all the boxes that they want checked too. And just like we don't want to rush our side when making that big decision, if we're bringing in 6 to 8 guys in the high school class nationally, there's no need to kind of rush anything with any individual. The same would be said on the other side. Like, we always recommend that guys don't rush their process. When you boil it down to making that big time decision in life, you really want to be so certain that it has checked all the boxes. And we're just big believers in that being the best model to have that thorough process. And when we decide and the student athlete decides that it's the right fit, like it really is the right fit, which I think can be lost at times because of the inherent pressures, if you will, for guys to want to get to the end of the line, or in some cases, coaches potentially wanting to finish a class. So I actually like the fact that this has shifted a little bit later, because it kind of allows for more of the relationship building of the process, which is probably not talked about as much as some of like the X's and O's as you get into it.
I really love that answer, because I think that's one thing that I think we talk a lot about, and that you and I have talked a lot about in our conversations as well. Like, the space so I would argue that the high academic process at schools like Georgetown, or at some of these, elite academic universities at the D1 and D3 level, already moved a little bit slower than like the Power 4 type conference schools, just because of the academic rigor that's required as part of that process. Now, with the what you're alluding to is kind of the roster size changes, right? Like cutting a few spots off every roster, and you have fewer kids on campus. You need to be more and more certain that the kids you're bringing in are going to be able to contribute. And so you want a little bit more vetting of that incoming recruiting class, right? So I think that both those things, they sometimes, I think, feel negative, or they are interpreted as like, why is this process moving so slow? But I couldn't agree with you more. I think that what that does is it creates space in the process to give families, give student athletes, and give coaching staffs the opportunity to really make sure that the kids they're bringing in are the right fit, and really do check all those boxes.
Yeah. And I think the word slow, honestly, it gets thrown around a lot, and I'll catch myself using it sometimes too when I'm talking to prospective student athletes, and I catch myself and I'm like, hey, slow probably isn't the right word here. Like methodical, thorough, like those are better words, because at the end of the day, it's a positive when you go through a process with a prospective student athlete, and you build that relationship. When it comes time to make that decision on our end, and then on their end, when it comes time to make their decision, like there is like so much confidence that like everything has been cross-checked. We've done everything. We've seen everything. Like, we feel good, you feel good. And it's exciting at that point. I mean, when we get kids on campus, when we get to the step in the process where kids are coming to visit us, like those are some of the most exciting, that's probably the most exciting part of the process, because we've seen him play a couple of times. We've talked to him. Like, every coach on the staff has talked to him. We've talked to their coaches, travel coaches, high school coaches. We've kind of gone. We know where the admission side of things stands. We know where the financial aid package or whatever it may be is going to kind of fall into some sort of window for that. And so like that visit really kind of becomes a culmination of like, okay, like guys are itching to get here. We're itching to have them here, and very oftentimes that really is kind of like the last thing to happen, and it's always really exciting.
I love that. I love the way that you kind of think and talk about that. And I also love the use of methodical rather than slow. I think like intentional methodical is absolutely the better phrase. So if you don't mind, I'm probably gonna steal that moving forward. So could you talk like in some concrete terms, like at this point last year or the year before in your time at Georgetown, how does this year look different than previous years with some of these changes, whether that's, all the things changing in the landscape of D1 baseball? I think most specifically so far we've talked about is around the roster size changes, but like, how does this year look different? How has it changed, what you're doing for 26s and 27s?
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest change is just the number of guys. And for us, it really doesn't change that much, to be honest. One, because we we kind of anticipated, and most coaches, most Division I coaches did anticipate, and we heard rumblings for a while. Heck, even coming out of COVID, like everybody knew that it wasn't going to be, when we had unlimited rosters that COVID year, everyone knew that at some point things were going to have to whittle back down. Obviously pre-COVID, the rosters being 35. We knew that there was going to be some kind of trend to get us lower, and the NCAA kind of gracing everybody to be at 40 for a few years was certainly helpful. But we knew it probably wasn't like a long-term, stay at 40 type of thing. So it wasn't like a complete shock to us. But it did lower the class sizes a little bit. Before, like the 25 class and prior, we always talked about like 8 to 10 high school guys in the class. And now we talk about 6 to 8. And even when I say 6 to 8, we're probably going to land more on the 8 side. So, I mean, again, it's you're somewhat splitting hairs when looking at like the totality of it. But yeah, I would say that's the biggest change. I mean, again, like the timeline of it for us, it doesn't really change too much. Like maybe this time last year, we had like maybe 1 or 2 more guys already locked in. But the other side of that is that there is no, cookie cutter one-way model. It's always the same. Every school is doing it the same. Like, and that's what we talk about even individually with each guy. Like there's a process, there's steps that we want to take and things that we want to kind of check off, but no 2 guys is going to have the same like timeline. Some of that depends on where they live. Obviously a local guy who lives right in our backyard, we naturally are going to be able to see him play a little bit more. And it would be easier to set up visits and things like that versus a guy on the West Coast, right? Like we get out there and we'll go see guys, but it may not be like on the drop of a dime, specifically in the spring, right? Springtime, we're not going to be able to get out to as many high school games that we don't happen to be in that area for because we're either playing a team or we just live in DC. So those are some things that can kind of impact the timeline just naturally. And so even within that, it's hard for me to compare like one class to another or whatever, more so just like step back and view like the totality of, yes, it is like just a little bit, pushed back from a timeline standpoint, but I wouldn't say unreasonably so. And again, I would actually view that as a positive, especially for the kid that maybe is still improving. Maybe he is still developing within high school baseball, because I'm a believer that every guy is developing. I mean, I tell our guys all the time, until you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, there's something else. There's another gear you can find. But especially for those kids that come June, maybe they didn't feel they were ready. Maybe they knew that, they were about to make a big jump in late August, or they kind of felt something coming. That kid ends up being actually really fortunate in this case, because now those events that he does in the fall, or the travel games that he has in the fall, or the camps that he does in the fall, those are now like a really good window for that guy to still be squarely in the mix at a lot of places. And as you mentioned, high academic places are certainly the main topic of point right now. Like that guy benefits massively from this.
Yeah. So I love that you tied in that kind of player development piece, because one thing that I often say and that I truly believe is like, I don't think that players should be sacrificing player development on the altar of exposure, right? At a certain point, you do certainly need to pursue exposure so that you can get to that next level and get the eyeballs on you, but it can't and shouldn't come at the expense of continuing to develop as a player. So when you're looking at a guy, what role does that development play? Like you see him one summer, you see him a month later, you see him 6 months later. Like how important is that development and that trajectory that you're able to see and as you make the decision and talk with kids?
That's actually one of the main reasons why our process has historically probably been seen as more thorough, or at times maybe labeled as slow compared to some of our peers or compared to other schools, because we really like to view a track record. No different in some ways, if I can make the analogy, no different than admissions looking at transcripts. They're going to want to see improvement year over year. I'm taking harder classes, I'm doing better, yada, yada, yada. We're the exact same way. We would love to see, if you're this player now, and then 4 months later we see you again and you're the exact same player, what's the takeaway from that? Versus if we see you 4 months later and you're better, well, now we're kind of seeing a good trend. And obviously, again, it's case by case, because we're not going to be able to see every kid as often. We're not going to be able to see every kid, the summer of after their sophomore year and the summer after their junior year. Like, there's no rules and regulation to it, especially in our house. But there definitely is a lot of truth to looking at the trend. And that could be a number of different ways. Like, hey, he got more physical, or, his baseball IQ is a little bit better, or he's a little more polished in the box, or, whatever it may be. Looking at trend over time and having multiple coaches on our staff see you, that becomes the baseline for everything we work off of, because no high school baseball player is at their peak, right? And they shouldn't be. Our hope and our goal is that when we do get down to the nitty gritty of committing a player to join our class and eventually become a part of our team their freshman year, our hope is that they're a better player their freshman year than they were their senior year in high school, and so on and so on and so on. And that's different for every guy, right? Naturally. I mean, again, I know this conversation is more geared towards like the recruiting side of it, but it's no different than even when you're here. Every guy's on a different track developmentally. Not everyone's, at the same pace. I think that's probably something that can become a bit of a misconception, even within the recruiting landscape, because I hear all the time from people, and let me preface, I'm not the pitching coach, and I'm not the coach that cares nothing about velo and whatever. I mean, again, I'm sure we'll probably talk about that, but it's a good analogy and thing to discuss, because oftentimes people are like, hey, he's 84, 86. That means next year he'll be 86, 88. And then his freshman year, he'll be, 88, 92.
One thing too is like that I think about quite a bit is like, what is the role as you assess a player, what's the role of kind of where they are now and the development that they've demonstrated to date versus the potential upside for who they're becoming, right? Like, what's the role of realized potential versus potential that's still on the table when you're deciding a kid that you're interested in as a player?
Yeah. Projectability, right, is the word that it gets thrown around, and obviously it's a real word, and there's a lot of truth to that. But like I said, I'm a believer that every kid is a project, right? Every guy that we get, we're going to want to get more out of and see improvement year over year. The one thing I've always said with that, and again, I do think that this nugget may help some families, when having conversations or when kind of going through the process, like, because I believe that every kid is projectable. The one thing that I always keep in the back of my mind is that I don't want to neglect the word project in that. So for me, when I see a guy, and I'm a pitching coach, right? So let's say I'm watching a pitcher. If he's not fully polished, or if I see that there's a need for improvement, or, whatever it may be, I'm going to want to know, or at least think that I know, that I'll be best suited to take on that project, that I will be the right coach to be able to help that guy in his development. I'm never going to take, again, the word projectability gets thrown around so much. I'm never going to take a kid just because he's projectable if that project is not something that's going to be for me. And that could be something, a physical improvement that he has to make, or quite frankly, it could just be the relationship, and again, that's where that becomes such a big piece. Because if we're going to go through this development together, me and the player, then we need to be, have that good model and that good working relationship to be able to go through that development together. And so I view that the same way, but I do think that there's a lot of truth to, there is some relationship between guys that are a little bit more polished in their high school years versus guys that are kind of that more untapped potential. And the way that I talk about that is that you're not ever really going to fill a class with just a bunch of guys that you think have a chance to become good. Like, you can take some of those guys, and you love to take some of those guys for sure, but you also want to have some of those guys that are a little bit more polished. And, the way we operate is that the best players play, right? If you're the best guy to help us win, you're going to help us win. You're going to have that opportunity to go prove and show everything you can do when you're on campus. But when push comes to shove, you got to take advantage of those opportunities if you want to keep playing and contributing to wins. So for me, I look at, like, there's those two types of guys, and I want a little bit of both. I don't go after one or the other, or close myself off from one guy or the other. Like, I really want to have, like, and we at Georgetown want to have a really balanced class, and we want to have a balanced team. And so not everyone's going to be at the same part of their developmental phase, and that's okay, because again, once they get here, with a 34-man roster this year, like, there's going to be 34 individuals that are at different points.
I love that because and one thing there that I want to kind of touch on is it has to be the right project for you, right? Like one thing that we hear is like, well, if I can play at this school, therefore I can play at this school, at a peer school. And that might be true, but also might not be, right? Because
Yeah.
coaches are like coaches want to recruit to their strengths as well, right? One thing that the example I always bring up is a mutual friend of ours, Tucker Frawley, when he was at Yale, he was
Yeah.
like, I can take the rawest athlete and give him the best infield footwork in the country, right? But he knew that he wasn't the guy who was going to be able to take a pitcher and take him from 88 with so-so command to 93 with great command and a secondary pitch, right? He knew that he could develop this better than he could develop that. So when he was recruiting guys, there was a little bit more leeway to go, all right, in this realm, I can go more projectability. Here, I need to look for a little bit more polish. And I think that like that sometimes escapes players and families as they think through the process, just because they're like, well, I look like this kid is going here, therefore I can go there and their peer schools. And that may or may not be true, depending on what the coach's strengths are.
Yep, 100%. That's a great one sentence way of saying what I said.
Oh.
In a lot more words.
I want to work into coach communication, because one thing that you and I, again, when we were talking on site in Buena Park, we were like, let's try to give some kids some concrete and tactical help on, okay, how do I communicate with coaches before camp, at camp, after camp? So in the realm of email communication, because I think that, email inboxes are crowded. One of the most frequent questions we get is like, what should I send as an email to a coach? How do I stand out in an inbox? What are some things I need to include? What are some things I shouldn't include? So like when it comes to email communication, what are the things that you look for? Are there things that you would give high schoolers to say, here's how you can get a coach's attention? What does a good email look like? What does it need to include? Like, what are some tips there for them?
Yeah, so the first thought, and pardon me if I kind of jump to a few different thoughts, but one of my first thoughts on that is that sometimes we'll get obviously emails, we get a lot of emails, and every coach does. But we'll get emails that someone will email like just me, for example, and they'll be a picture and they'll send it just to my email. Or, whatever. Like the one thing I would like include everybody on the email. You do want your best shot at that being seen, because I will say sometimes it does get hard, right? And try our best to keep up and get around to things, and when we go to events, kind of know like, oh, I'm pretty sure I got an email from that kid, found the email and I got all this info in it, whatever. But include everybody on there. Like, I want emails. When I get emails, I love seeing Coach Thompson CC'd on there, right? Because now both of us, maybe we have a conversation with it. Maybe I'm in the office with him and I say, hey, did you see that email we just got? It just came through. Like I would say include everybody. The other little tidbit on the email, again, the tactical thing, when you send an email and then you now have a new update or you got a new transcript or whatever it may be, reply to the first email that you sent, so that when we then go back, it's like it's all in one thread. It can become a lot to sometimes try to like fish around in our emails to find, which, when did he include his transcript and when did he include his summer schedule and where did he put his high school coaches contacts and where did this yada yada, where did the video get linked? Like it's a lot easier when it's in a thread. And that's what I found to be like the best and easiest play for guys, is when they do just kind of reply to the email that they've done. Now it's like a one-stop shop. When I go to my email and I search that name, everything's right there, and I don't have to go like searching around for, was it December that he sent me that one thing? Was it whatever?
I think absolutely. That's one that I think I heard you say that a few years ago and was like, oh my, absolutely. Of course. That's what they should do. Because I think that what that kind of amounts to is like, you got to make it easy for coaches to have what they need, right? Coaches' inboxes, I imagine, are very crowded. You get a lot of emails from prospective student athletes. You're busy all spring. You're busy all summer. You're busy through the fall and winter with preseason stuff. Like, you want to make it easy for coaches to be able to find the info that they need. So what is the info that you need? Like, what should that intro email include? And then what are the updates where you're like, as soon as you have X, new test score, new video, whatever it is, like when should those updates come in generally that you want to see?
Yeah, so certainly, and this probably sounds like so basic, but in your header, in the title of your email, like that should include some basic information, i.e., the class that you're in. Obviously your name, position, whatever other information you'd like. Maybe it's your high school, maybe it's just the state that you're from, or whatever it is, but just some basic information again, so that it's like up at the top, easy. If I'm getting emails, and let's say it's a 2028 high school graduate, and he doesn't put anywhere in the email that he's a 2028, like I'm just not going to respond to it. Like, I'll promise you that right now. I will not respond to the email that doesn't say that stuff, because I'm not in the business of guessing, and in the business of, hoping that this communication is abiding by NCAA rules and stuff like that. So I would definitely say, please put in like all the basic information about yourself, your grad year, your position, where you're from, things of that nature. But yeah, inside that email, you certainly want to have done your research. I do think that this is talked about often. It is certainly very important that you're punctual in that email, because if you can't take the time to have the right coaches' names, or the right university name, or you can't take the time to spell things properly or put together like good thoughts, if that's the first interaction we're ever having about a guy, it's probably not showing the punctuality which we'd be looking for. But you want to include your transcripts. You want to include some video. You want to include your schedule, whether that's your upcoming summer schedule, your upcoming fall schedule, or your high school spring schedule, whatever it may be, kind of coming up in that next season. You want to include that. You want to include your contacts. Essentially, think about it like the references on a resume. Like you want to include your high school coach, your travel coach. Some people that we can kind of get in touch with to to bounce around questions to them and get a gauge of their experience coaching that guy. And then when you get updated things, a semester goes by and you get you get your new grades and your updated transcript, send that into the next one. You get some more video you want to pass along, send that into the next one. Again, like, not to harp on it, but even when I'm emailing back and we're going back and forth via email, I still love the fact that it's all in there, because now I just get to remember everything. If I've never met the player in person, if I've never seen them play in person, but the email's good and a lot of things check out, and we're kind of like building that initial relationship before a phone call or what have you, it's super helpful to have everything in a line.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. What is the most common mistake that you see? Like, what do players most commonly do wrong in email communication? Is it like lack of personalization? Is it a new thread every time? Like, what are the things that, like, if you could snap your fingers and have one mistake disappear?
Well, I think that's two different questions, because if I could make one disappear, I'd probably say, it's crazy to not have the right coach's name or the right university name in your email. So I would say that's got to get out. It
That's
doesn't
just
happen
to cease
often.
exist. Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to cease to exist. But to that point, there is a lot of truth to doing your homework, doing your research on a school. Yes, I get, and we all understand that you're not going to sit down and write from, dear Coach Capen all the way to signing your name. You're not going to write everything unique to each school and each coach that you send, right? There's going to be a general template that you're going to be working off of, and there should be, right? But if in that kind of general template, the things that you do customize, like, hey, I would be interested in studying whatever, if we don't have that thing that you said you want to study, well, I don't want you to go to Georgetown and not have what you want to study. So I want you to go find the right home for you. And that, again, it's an attention to detail thing that, sure, it might take 5 minutes for you to scroll through the website, and figure out what major at Georgetown, or what, school within Georgetown you'd want to go to and study, and things of that nature. Like that doesn't take that much time. It shows that you've done your research. And it really does then become helpful for when we do start having conversations like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
Now leaving the digital world, and we're talking like at a showcase like Headfirst, at a tournament, at the Georgetown Prospect Camp, a lot of players feel really nervous about approaching a coach, right? Like, that's I'm walking up to Coach Capen from Georgetown. Georgetown's my dream school. Like, I'm a little tighter than usual. What are some kind of like tips, tricks that you would recommend to those kids about those conversations, and also potentially some like traps and mistakes that you see that you can help them avoid?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is like we're all just human beings. At the end of the day, I get it. You might be 16 years old or whatever, 17 years old. And so there's just a natural set of nerves, especially when you are kind of thinking like, hey, this could be my future on the line. Like this conversation, first impression is big. That's natural. I think it's always good to kind of just center yourself and ground yourself in the fact that we're just human beings, just like anybody else that you ever come in contact with. We just happen to be wearing a logo. But the other thing, and I know you didn't mention this, Max, like in my case, I attended Head First when I was in high school. So like the whole, like we've been in the shoes before, like most college baseball coaches really have been in the shoes of having recruiting conversations, getting recruited to go play. We've all been, 16, 17, like we've all kind of been there. And so there's naturally just a little bit of on our side, like it shouldn't be an uncomfortable, setting, especially at a Head First where it's built in, where you have those coaches connections and as well as anybody, like I'll stay out there and red shirts at Head First may get on me about that one to wrap it up a little quicker, but I want to, shake the hand. I want to, have interactions. And all of us do. I mean, at the end of the day, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, if you're a good player and you're a good student, now we got to figure out if you're a great person, right? Because that's, we talk about it all the time. We want the best baseball players who are the best students, who are the best people. We can watch, we can figure out where you're at baseball wise. We can look at your transcript. We can gather testing scores. We can figure out where you stand academically, but the human aspect to it, those face-to-face interactions, the phone calls, the email exchanges, the visiting on campus, like all that stuff gives us the body of work to really get to know you as a person. And I mean, my recommendation obviously is just be yourself, because there's a lot of truth to that. You don't want to try to be somebody else. You don't want to try to say the right thing or avoid saying the wrong thing. You want to be yourself. We're going to bring in 6 to 8 guys in a class across the entire country. So we do not stress that we're going to find, the wrong human beings in that. We are going to find the right 6 to 8 human beings. But you don't want to feel like you're forcing yourself to be a certain person because you're trying to end up at Georgetown. Because I'll just tell you, at the end of the day, if you're doing that, you're going to show up. Now you're actually going to be yourself, and you're not going to be happy. It's not going to be the right fit. So you just want to be yourself. You want to remind yourself that we're humans. We've been in the shoes before, and we are looking forward to those conversations, just as they're looking forward to the conversation. Sure, they're going to get up there and might be a little bit nervous, but that's okay. Like, no one's getting judged on being a little nervous. Human emotions are real.
I mean, I could not agree anymore. And I did skip over in your intro and your bio that that you were a Head First alumni. I think we're still looking for your pitching eval from that camp in Virginia.
I have it on file.
There we go. Perfect. But I love what you said there about like you got to be yourself, right? Like, because it is, as you've said a number of times now tonight, like it's a two-way fit, right? I think that there's sometimes this perception of a high school player, they're walking up to a coach and the coach is at a school that they're interested in, and therefore the coach holds all the cards, right? But it's not. It is a 50-50 decision. Yes, the coach needs to be interested in you as a player. You need to have the grades, and they need to be interested in you as a person. But also, you need to be interested in that school. You need to be interested in building a relationship with that coach. And I think that understanding that it is a two-way fit and a two-way street in that does honestly help with that, some of those conversations. Because it's like, okay, this isn't just me walking up needing to make a perfect impression. It's me introducing myself to another person so that we can get a sense of each other, and not just, I need to like throw all this information at this person so that they like me. I also love what you said about like, you need to be true to yourself in those interactions, because eventually that's what you're going to be in that program, right? Like you need to represent yourself truly as a player and also as a person, because that's what's going to equip you to find the right fit in those conversations.
Totally.
One final question along the kind of the coach communication is, we get some questions about interpreting coach communication. Like, how do you read the tea leaves of the emails that I receive from a coach, or not receiving emails from coaches? So, in your communication with players, now again, assuming that they're past August 1st before their junior year, so like you are able to have direct recruiting specific conversations. How direct are you in your conversations in your communication with players, and how have you seen kind of other coaches do that? And if coaches aren't direct, how do you talk about kind of reading or assessing what you're hearing back from college coaches?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is like trying to read the tea leaves proverbially, probably not worth trying to get caught up in all that. Like, and that's a real recommendation. Again, because just like players are all unique individuals, coaches are all unique individuals too. And in my case, for example, I do have two phones. I have my personal life phone and then I have my work phone, right? So when I have recruiting conversations, I'm not, missing a dinner text or something like that, and vice versa. And again, that's like my unique thing. So if I get home and my work phone, gets put to the side, I may not get back to that text at 9 p.m. at night until the next day. Versus there's another coach out there that maybe is on his phone and is, able to get back to things quicker, or whatever it may be, like in a small example format. I would not try to read too far into the tea leaves, because one, you're going to know if a school is interested in you, and you want the school to be interested in you anyway, because it is a two-way street. And two, everybody's going to have their own styles. I think for us, if we're jumping on phone calls, like if we're taking the time to spend, 30, 40 minutes on the phone with guys, like that's usually a pretty good sign that we're taking a good chunk of time out of a day that we could be putting towards something else in order to build a relationship and kind of dig into some things. Again, does that mean that if I jump on a phone call with a guy that he's going to, be a part of our roster one day? No. But it is a step in the process, similar to how I talked about once you get to the visit, point of it. We're not going to spend, a couple hours with a guy visiting on campus if we don't have, some good interest there. So I do think that even asking questions about coaches' process, like where their process stands, hey, what's the next step in the process? It's one of the best questions that guys can ask. Hey, hey, coach, really enjoyed this phone call. Like, loved everything you guys are about. I could totally see myself at Georgetown. What would be the next steps in the process? Very fair question. And most coaches are going to have an answer for what their school's process kind of looks like. So I wouldn't really look at it as like we're trying to read the tea leaves and, figure out like, hey, is a short email back with a period at the end a bad thing, or if there's a smiley face at the end followed by an exclamation point a good thing. Like I wouldn't get too caught up in some of that. But I would more so just, be present in wherever you're at in that process, and know that everyone's timeline is going to be different, but kind of get a sense of what you can do, to further advance, those conversations or further advance. And the honest coaches are going to, they're going to be honest. If the transcript's not going to work out for us, then we'll tell guys that, Coach Thompson is going to be the first thing that he'll do. It's the first thing that I'm going to do. Like, if we're not going to string you along through a process, if we don't feel like it's going to be a good fit, and obviously the hope and the expectation is the same on the flip side. If guys end up not feeling passionate about Georgetown, or if they come on a visit with us and they leave thinking, I don't know if that's a spot for me. Great, you got to find the spot that's best for you. We got to find the players that are best for us. It is nothing personal ever, and just being as honest and as open as you can be. Again, like, we'll be honest and open on our side as well of kind of where we're at. And, sometimes the update may be no update, but that's okay. Like, that's where we're at.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to process, because you said process. Like we have talked process a lot, and how this is, like, I know you use that word very intentionally as a way to kind of get there. I want to talk about kind of like evaluating on-field talent. When you're at a showcase, when you're at a tournament, or when you're at your Georgetown prospect camps, what are you looking for, and how can players kind of prepare to stand out in that setting and kind of get some attention, or raise some eyebrows, get their name highlighted, however you want to put it?
Yeah, I think the first and main thing, specifically, I'll talk about showcases. the main thing is we're just trying to see athleticism. I can't stress that enough. Even if it's a pitcher, it's like the number one thing I'm trying to look for is like athleticism. Like, does a guy have a sense of how his body moves? When you're in a showcase setting, I feel like oftentimes, and depending on the showcase you're at, you're trying to hit metrics so bad that you're not just playing baseball the way that you would play baseball. It is one thing that I do appreciate and like about the head first model is when guys go do their defensive showcase, they're just doing their defensive showcase. Then separately, they get an opportunity to do their pull down into a radar gun. But there are showcase models where, you'll be throwing across your shortstop and you're taking your ground ball throwing across the diamond and they have the radar gun up and guys are feeling like they're taking an extra step into it. They're really trying to wind up because they're chasing some number, but that doesn't necessarily show how you move. That doesn't show, if you're an infielder, you want to have good feet, you want to have good hands, you want to have a good relationship with how quick you can get rid of the baseball accurately. Like all of those sorts of things, you want to be able to identify that of just, hey, this guy he's an athlete. He's got a good sense of his body. He moves well and he can play baseball. If there's coaches that want to look, at metrics, that you can kind of have those, separate where, if I get 3-4 ground balls, I don't really want to see you just trying to crow hop from across the infield. I'd rather just see you field the ground ball and throw it to first accurately and then move on from there. So obviously in a game format, the one thing I would say is that it's not about your stat line. It's not about, hey, I was 3 for 4 with, 2 doubles. You can be 0 for 4 with 4 of the hardest lineouts that you've ever seen. And that's going to matter a lot. Again, I say all these things to hopefully try to take pressure away from some guys and a lot of things that I'm kind of saying, but the flip side is also true. Like just because you went 4 for 4 with 4 singles doesn't mean, that you're a bona fide guy for that coach in his eyes. Everyone has, like we've already mentioned, everyone has their things of kind of what they're looking for and things that they value. But again, like we're not ever going to judge a baseball player off of one game, one at bat, whatever it may be. We want to see things through time. And if that means you were 0 for 4 with 3 lineouts and, a punch out, like that doesn't mean that's a bad day. We're watching where the take's strong, where the swing decision's good, all things like that, and again, I'll get off my soapbox, but ranting more about some specific baseball things. Like I also don't really want to hear you complain about the zone or I punched out and that ball was a foot off the plate. Okay, we all see it. Trust me, we all know baseball. We've seen it. If anything, you complaining about it gives you a higher likelihood of getting off of somebody's list rather than finding a way to weasel your way back into someone's list. I actually give advice sometimes, and I say when you're going to play in front of a bunch of coaches, your goal, if it's the first time you're being seen, your goal is to just not get off of lists. Because again, most coaches and us, Coach Thompson and I specifically, we are never going to just offer a kid and take a kid because we saw him get 2 knocks, 30 minutes from each other in his first 2 at-bats on day 1 of the head first showcase. We're going to want to do a heck of a lot more digging. We're going to want to get, on the phone with coaches. We're going to see video. We're going to hopefully watch you play again, all those things. And so you don't want to get too caught up in singular moments. You really just want to play your brand of baseball, be who you are. And if that's the right fit for somebody, perfect. And if it's not, also perfect.
So I want to tie back what you said just there because it was superb, and it ties back to that piece of development that we were talking about earlier, I think, which I think you alluded to. Like every time a coach sees a player, it's a single snapshot, right? And one snapshot is a 16-year-old, a snapshot a few months later, a snapshot the next summer is a 17-year-old. You're trying to kind of piece together all these different moments. And I think that sometimes players get fixated on the outcome of an at-bat or an outcome of an inning on the mound as opposed to the inputs. But it sounds to me like you're looking for like, okay, what are these inputs? Is the ball hard hit, not where did it end up? And then how does this window, this snapshot track to the next one and demonstrate development? And so it's much more of a, as we've said all along, like process as opposed to, oh, I saw this kid hit a bomb and therefore, that's the moment that that I had to do. Like,
Right.
sure, hitting home runs. Yeah. Like coaches are going to be interested in kids that hit the ball really hard. Like, absolutely. But again, that's one snapshot. And I think that we see players get fixated on like, oh, I went 0 for 4. And I'm like, man, I saw how hard you hit those balls. That does not count as 0 for 4 when coaches are watching in this kind of setting.
Yep. Yeah, and the same thing is true on the pitching side too. I think
Yeah.
that's another thing is and people in their emails they'll say, "Hey, I'm a pitcher that throws 88." It's like, do you throw 88, or has one baseball out of your hand touched 88? And that's fine, not taken away from that. But it's the same thing. You go out of a showcase setting and it's like, oh, I threw 88. Well, that's not the only thing that mattered there. Like there's so much more. Like, first of all, you were probably living 84, 86, and you had one on the upper end of that. That's great. But don't shy away from who you are, be who you are, and collect outs. Like, you want to have secondary pitches. You want to have a feel for the strike zone. Yeah, you want to have plus stuff, but you want to show that you're a pitcher, and you're a pitcher who is going to continue to work hard, and you're going to continue to develop, no different than the offensive player. Like you said, it's not a one screenshot, hey, this one pitch or this one at bat or this one inning, or one game. Like there's so much that goes into it, that you really just play hard, play your game, do all the right things. Don't get yourself taken off of a list, because if you trust the work that you're going to be putting in, that you can bet on yourself to be better, regardless of how the first one went. If it went great, good. Work hard and be better next time that coach sees you. If it didn't go great, good. Work hard and be better next time that coach sees you.
Yeah. And so because I'm really glad that you brought up metrics and brought up velo and that sort of stuff. So because I'm always really curious, because I've seen so many different coaching staffs use things like batted ball velocity or 60 time or pitching velo, all these different metrics that they have, or spin rate, whatever it is, use them so different. So what is when you're assessing a player, what's the kind of the balance between, or the role that metrics play versus in-game play versus like the other pieces of what you're assessing on the field?
Yeah. So you're 100% right. Every school, every coaching staff, and even in some regard, every individual coach is going to value different metrics in a different way. And sometimes that may be a part of their recruiting class. That may be a priority for them. They may be saying, hey, in this class, we really want an outfielder who can run a 6.6 60 or whatever it may be. And so they're looking for that. Not every coach is looking for the same stuff. We've already kind of said that. In our case, we're never going to recruit or not recruit a player because of a metric or a set of metrics. And, the example that I use actually is around the 60. I'm never going to recruit an outfielder because he's got a super low 60 time compared to his peers. And just that. Conversely, I'm not going to not recruit an outfielder because his 60 time is a little bit higher than his peers. If that one guy is a better baseball player, whoever it is, like, we're going to choose the better baseball player. And I think, again, like all the metrics, like there are schools and there are coaching staffs that they're looking for something specific, and that's great. Again, I think in these conversations, I think it's important to ask some of those things. It's a question that gets asked all the time, and it's the same answer that I just gave everyone here. Like, we're never going to tie ourselves just to a metric. Again, no different than when I'm in the bullpen working with guys. I tell our players all the time, our goal is not to throw pretty bullpens according to the metrics. Our goal is to get hitters out. Certainly there's a lot of truth to, some pitch design stuff and working towards, a certain number, a certain whatever to profile something, but that's just a part of the developmental process. At the end of the day, the goal is to win baseball games. The goal, if you're a pitcher, is to get guys out. Your goal as an offensive player is to help your team score runs. And I think that's where we are looking more for the baseball player. And again, it's going to waver. There's a guy might be more projectable, a guy may be more polished, whatever it may be. But it's important to know, what schools, and if it is a school that you're really interested in, if they're looking for, a certain metric, if they are looking for batted ball exit velocity, then yes, if that's your dream school and that's where you want to end up, and that you're chasing something, like, yeah, put in the time to develop yourself in that regard, but don't neglect the fact that ultimately what's going to allow you to perform at the highest level in this sport is just the ability to win, like the ability to play baseball. I think it's one of the best things about the game of baseball. You can be tall, you can be short. There's 1,000 different ways you can be a really good baseball player, when it's awesome. But at the end of the day, that's your job. And so we look at metrics both in the developmental process and in the recruiting process as just information. That's all it is. It doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just information. Ultimately, we have a goal that we're trying to chase, and that's winning and having success.
Now, pivoting into process, we've talked about kind of different aspects, right? You need athletic interests, you need the academic fit, and also you need this kind of personality or culture fit, let's call it. Mm-hmm. What's the relative role that these different components play as you assess a prospective student athlete, and kind of like when in the process do you assess these different pieces? Like what order they generally work in? When do those things typically fall out? And I know every process every year is different and individualized, but like if there's a general kind of like order to those things, how do they flow?
Yeah, I would say the human aspect to it is probably one that's like ever being evaluated. You know, as I mentioned, we're never going to make clear-cut decisions on a guy's playing ability based off of one time. But if you see a guy and he's really, really, really good, you have a sense that next time you see him, he's also going to be really, really good. So in some ways, I don't want to say your mind is made up, but in some ways you're like, okay, that's a really good player. I'm going to do my due diligence, and we're going to do our due diligence as a coaching staff to confirm that and make sure of that. But it's almost like, check, okay, he's a really good player. Let's go make sure that we see him again, and he's still a really good player, and he hasn't trended in the bad direction. Transcripts are, as soon as we're kind of interested in a guy, it's really easy to understand the academic piece. For us, you know, it's as simple as, you know, getting the testing, getting the transcripts, sending it over to our admissions rep who works with us through athletics, getting a read from him, and then kind of moving from there. But yeah, that human component, that's kind of like ever being evaluated throughout everything. So that could be the first thing, you know, and then that could be, you know, something that sparks if I was on pitching evals during the first game at head first. And so I wasn't able to see a player play, but he comes to me during the coaches connection. I really like him as a human being, and we have conversations about his transcript. We have conversations about whatever, and I really like that dude. I may make it a priority during my roaming session for head first to make sure I go lock in on that guy. So that one is, it can go, that one is just an ever being evaluated type of thing, as it should be. But the baseball is probably going to be the first thing that's going to spark interest, simply just because we need to win baseball games. And yes, we need the best students who are the best baseball players. But again, it's similar to the 60 time. We won't recruit a baseball player to be on our team just because he got a perfect score in the SAT and has never gotten anything but an A. You do got to be a good baseball player as well. So that's obviously going to be where most of the interest gets sparked from.
Yeah. So one follow-up kind of to that is like, in that assessing that kind of personality, that culture fit, how important is individual coach to individual player? Like, how important is that relationship in the recruiting process, and also for student athletes? Where would you kind of weight that in the making the college decision, right? Like, I'm looking for the right school, plays the right level of baseball, you know, I'm a right fit there, and the coach relationship, like as kind of a puzzle piece there. What role do you kind of see that playing in that decision?
Yeah, massive. I mean, we're going to spend a lot of time around our players, and our players are going to spend a lot of time around us. So it definitely has to be a part of the decision, though I will give the caveat that ultimately you do want to make sure you are very, very happy at that institution. That's what I love about college athletics. Like, you have the 2-track mindset, right? You want to play baseball at the highest level, but you want to get the best degree. And so you obviously want to make sure that the university, the school that you're ultimately ending up at, if you want to play for Coach Thompson and I at Georgetown, we want you to love Georgetown. You know, and I think that goes with any institution that guys are looking at, is you want to love the place that you're going to end up. You know, but you do want to have a relationship with that coaching staff. You do want to be dying to play for that coaching staff. I think, you know, if you choose just based on the school and maybe you don't have a good relationship with that coaching staff, it's not going to be the best fit overall. that you're looking for. So, obviously I think I kind of know where you're alluding to this, and in the fact that similar to, there happens to be some players going to some different schools in today's day and age. There's also, there's coaching changes, right? Guys get new jobs and guys end up elsewhere. And I think probably the next question you were going to ask is, hey, what happens if you went to a school because you love that coaching staff, but then that coaching staff goes elsewhere? One, I would say, be present. Don't put all your eggs in, again, playing hypotheticals that could or could not happen. But two, I would say that that's probably a really positive thing about the transfer portal, in that if you love playing for that coaching staff and that was a part of your decision, you did love the institution, but you loved that coaching staff and the culture that they breed at that school, and that guy does end up, bettering his situation or having a career change in that way and goes to a different school. And if he's dying to have you come with him and you want to do that, I mean, there's a model for that right now. But again, that's where I go back to, don't make the decision just on the coaching staff, because you also don't know if that coach is going to go to another school, and maybe you have no idea. Maybe he can't get, maybe he can't bring you with him. Maybe it's not going to happen. You can never, again, play that future, looking through a crystal ball game. You want to make the best decision for yourself and your long-term, plan at getting the really good degree and being in the place that you want to be at. But yes, having the relationship with the coaching staff is ever important, because we're going to spend a lot of time together.
A lot of time together with those teammates and that coaching staff and the culture that breeds. Like, that's a lot of time in study hall and locker rooms and on bus trips and all that. Like that needs to play a role. I love the way you phrased that and went one layer deeper too, into something that I know, like, sometimes coaches are like, I don't necessarily want to think or talk about this. So I appreciate the candor. Working into the Q&A. So I have some of the questions from folks as they registered. If you have other questions, and then there are a few that have come in, send them in the chat and in the Q&A function, and I'll take a look at those. We'll get started with some of the ones that came in. So one was around we've talked a little bit about the transfer portal and about some of the transfer rules. There's, I think, a mindset among some families like, oh, because of the transfer portal, schools aren't recruiting players, or they're recruiting fewer high school players or whatever. So the way that this is phrased is like, given the portal, are D1 schools still recruiting high school players, or are they mostly recruiting from other colleges, JUCOs, D3s, mid-major D1s? Like, how do you view the way that you guys use the portal? How are you guys balancing incoming high school players versus kind of like looking in the portal for specific needs? Yeah.
So Georgetown has a bunch of really, really competitive and really, really good graduate degrees. And so partly because of that, we do bring in some graduate students. They played their 4 years at their undergraduate place. Maybe their undergraduate school didn't have grad school, or maybe even if it did, it didn't have what they were looking to study. And so we get a fair amount of interest from graduate students in that way. That I would say, like, that's the use of the transfer portal for us. In terms of straight transfers, it's not as feasible with the model here. So we don't get a ton of those. And so for us, like high school players in the process, that's never going to go away. Like, we're always going to bring in high school guys. And again, the roster going down, does that mean we bring, one or two less guys each class? Sure. But we're always going to bring in, high school guys. And that's obviously a model that we feel super passionate about. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, you can go on someone's website and you can look at their roster. You can see, do they have a balance of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and grad guys? Do they have, majority, upperclassmen? Like, maybe their model is, you look at the roster and you see they got a bunch of guys that came from a different school and they're, a junior. So that was a straight transfer portal guy. And they have, 3 freshmen on the roster, or, you kind of look at that stuff, but you can also have conversations with coaches and ask that point blank. Cause again, you don't want to guess, you don't want to assume that how somebody's recruiting model is, or assume that you're either in or out on their board because of assumptions that you may make online. But I do think that can tell you a little bit of like, hey, could this be a spot that could work out for me? Because for us, I mean, we not only bring in freshmen, we like freshmen to go contribute. Like I said, we want players to play. So we want, if we're bringing you to be a part of our organization, it somewhat doesn't really matter if you're a freshman or if you're a 5th-year grad student. Whoever's better is going to get the opportunity to play, right? Whoever's better is going to be the one that's getting that at bat or getting the ball in the big spot. Because we're going to have all that sample and all that data on, the fall and the pre-spring and the early season games. Like, we're going to get a really good understanding.
One question that came in live, that it ties back to some of the timing questions that or like the kind of timing overview that we worked through early. So this player is a 2026, didn't have a lot of opportunities so far this summer to play in front of coaches. If you were working with this family, if you were talking to this family, what do you think they should do for the remainder of the summer and the fall? And I mean, key crucial questions like, does his recruiting process still have life? Does he still have a chance to get recruited? I think the answer to that one's yes, but I'd love to hear your take. Yeah.
Definitely yes. And that's kind of why I mentioned it earlier, is like, I do kind of view a lot of things I'm saying to hopefully like take a little ease off of any stress in the process, because it's naturally stressful, but it's also one of the most exciting things that happens in your life. So you want to kind of view that as the good stress in life and enjoy it. But yes, definitely still time. I would say like the number one best thing that guys could do in the fall, almost really kind of no matter where they're at in their process, if they're an uncommitted player, especially in the 2026 class coming into their senior year, is go to the camps of those schools. Because again, and I know you mentioned that you love hearing me say the word process, but the process is a real thing, and especially for us. And as we're going through it, we actually view camp to be able to check off a lot of the boxes in the process at once. And so if you feel like you're late in the game, or behind some peers or whatever, choosing a short list of 3 to 5 schools or whatever it may be that you're super interested in, you feel like you can play at that level or at their university. Maybe you've had some interest from that coaching staff, or maybe you just are dying to show them what you can do. Going to their camp allows you to be seen by the whole coaching staff. So in a way, it's basically 3 to 4 evaluations. In our case, we compare notes after, so we're getting 3-4 sets of eyes on all those guys at camp, and then we'll all reconvene afterwards to discuss. But camps are used as a really good recruiting tool. I mean, if you don't know the best player, the best couple players at your camp, every camp, like you do, who the best players are, and oftentimes coaches are bringing in guys that they want to see. In some ways, in some cases, that serves as kind of like that second time. Maybe you're from an area of the country that we just know we're not going to be able to get to that point. We saw you whatever, and we want to see you again. Coming over to camp now gives us that opportunity to see you again. And so in some ways, if we have a handful of those guys, we're kind of watching them compete against each other. We're watching almost like that short list of guys that are on the board. We kind of get to see and figure out, okay, who swings the needle one way or the other, like who's the best. It allows you to see campus, another stop on the trail, and it does get you a chance to really like put your shoes in being a baseball player at that institution, at that school, for that coaching staff. The way we run camp just like a day of practice. So you really get to kind of sit there and say, oh, I could see myself being a part of this, or not. Either way is great. But you get to have interactions with the coaches. We get to kind of see you interact with teammates proverbially, see you interact with us, see you play. You get to see campus, and it's like so many pieces kind of get to be checked off at once. That's probably like the number one thing that I could recommend. Like, if you're dying to be at a spot, there's nothing better you can do than going straight to that campus, to that school, and playing in front of that coaching staff.
100%. That's one thing that we get a lot of questions about, kind of the prospect camps and the role that they play in the process, and everything that we say, I think, like echoes a lot of what you said, right? You see the whole coaching staff, you meet some of the kids in the team, you're seeing campus. Like it is an important piece, because you're going, like, before you commit to a school, you're going to want to be on campus. You're going to want to meet the whole coaching staff. So why not do that in kind of a baseball context? Again, assuming that, like, if you're able to limit it to 3 to 5 schools, that's 3 to 5 very like potentially very valuable trips. If your list is every school in the country, then that's really tough, right? Like if you think
Yeah.
about it as a funnel, you want to make sure that you've worked down to schools that you're highly interested in, that are highly interested in you. And if there's a handful of those that are reasonable trips for the fall, like
Yeah.
there's nothing better that you can do than get in front of them at their prospect camps. I think that's really well said.
Yeah, make it intentional, I think is like you want to be very intentional. You don't just want to go to, 15 schools and jam up your whole fall, without a plan in place. Like you want to be very intentional for sure.
Yeah. One question that came in that I really like, because I know the way that you build relationships both with prospective student athletes, but then with your players. How does the coaching staff, how does Georgetown, a school like Georgetown, help players adjust to life the next level? High academic load, high athletic load, living away from home. Like, what are the things that you think about that help set up your first years for success there?
So when you say next level, are you talking about
I'm talking about college. Yeah, sorry, high school to college transition.
I was going to say I would love to talk about the next level of preparing guys there. Yes, the first that freshman fall is obviously massive to kind of get your feet wet and get comfortable. Where at times guys may and do feel like they're drinking out of a fire hose, right? You have a whole new set of athletic demands. You have a whole new set of academic demands. In some cases, guys are moving away from home, or they're living on their own for the first time, right? Or whatever it may be, living with roommates for the first time, whatever it may be. There's a certain natural set of challenges that come with making that transition from high school over to college. I will say I do think a lot of schools probably do a really, really good job of that, just as universities. But obviously there is that baseball component. And I do think that when you're going through the process, that is another piece of really figuring out what someone's team culture is like. Because like in our case, I can't say anything but amazing things about our guys who are just so welcoming and have open arms to every player that's joining our team for the first time and getting in and kind of helping them out. But yeah, I mean, you want to make relationships with your teammates as fast as possible. If there's guys that are upperclassmen, they've been through everything that you're going through at that school, like ask those questions as early as you can, because you're gonna get knocked down. You're gonna have, in our case, like, sometimes it's a guy's first B minus. He might get a B minus in a class in his freshman fall. That may be the first B minus he's ever had in his entire life. And it's like, okay, well, that's, sure, that's relative failure to kind of what you're used for. But when you look at all the things that you're balancing, you're in a fine spot. And, it's about how you go through that. And we always talk about, it's not a matter of if you get knocked down, it's a matter of when. Like, you will get knocked down. And so more importantly, how do you respond to that, right? Because there are a ton of academic demands that are going to be new. We get that as a baseball coaching staff. There are a bunch of new athletic requirements and, things of that nature, where you're getting pushed and you're getting challenged and you're trying to, develop and work hard. The good thing is your professors know that too. In our case at Georgetown, like our professors know that you're a student athlete. We have academic support in the athletic department. If you need tutors, if you need, help scheduling your classes or whatever it may be, we have that model built in, but not every institution has that. And I do think those are also important questions, because if you do feel like you may kind of need that little extra nudge when you get there, that may be something that swings the needle between one school and another. But time management, sorry, I said last. Oh, yeah. Time management. It is the most important skill that you can make sure you're developing. And you can develop that now. You can develop that while you're in high school. You can make sure that every minute of your day. You can make sure the times that you have to prioritize studying, or the times that you have to get extra swings in. You can kind of start gearing yourself up, knowing that, like, the most successful guys that we see, like, they're the guys that manage their time extremely well.
Yeah. Backtracking a little bit to the player who's a 2026 looking to get those opportunities. What I will say is I'm going to reach out to you, because I do think that we should talk about, if the schools that you're targeting are the schools that are at a head first event. I think that could be the next first step, because as Coach Cape said, like, working towards the fall, you want to be intentional. You want to pursue those opportunities on campus. You want to be intentional. One of the ways to do that is to start to narrow the filter by getting in front of a lot of schools and
100%.
assessing where that interest is. Again, that two-way interest.
Right.
So
When I asked the question, I
yeah.
had this assumption in my head that this player that we're talking about has been to a head first event. So yeah, if you've never been to a head first event, it's a great place to start because you're going to be seen by a lot of coaches at varying levels, and you're going to get a really good sense of kind of where you fit, all that stuff. I mean, I did head first as a player. It was one of the best things I did. I mean, that is absolutely step one. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. So Anthony, we will certainly be in touch tomorrow. Coach Kate, there's a great question here that I think you'll like because it's about baseball IQ. So you talked about the importance of baseball IQ. You want to recruit good baseball players. If you're a high IQ high school player, how do you demonstrate that to coaches? What are the things that make that kind of sing in these different settings?
Yeah. So how do you demonstrate it? I think it's one of those things, you have it or you don't. Like, you understand the game or you don't. I think if you are self-confident, knowing that you know your way around a baseball game, you have situational awareness, like all of those things, like it is going to shine. Like when we watch guys play baseball, you really kind of know who knows the game at least better than their peers. The one thing that I will say is that, again, a wonderful thing about our sport, you're always learning. To answer a question that you didn't ask, but you may also get there, if you feel like you're not quite there yet on the baseball IQ thing, and you know that that's probably an area you need to improve upon, turn on baseball and watch it. People make fun of me all the time because I say that I'm not a fan of like Major League Baseball. Like, I don't fanboy a team or whatever it may be. When I watch baseball, whether it's MLB, whether it's Major League Baseball, college baseball, heck, even when I'm like recruiting and I'm watching high school baseball, like, I am watching the game from like not a fan standpoint. Like, I'm watching and I'm learning and I'm growing. And I think that that's something that people are always going to be able to do as long as you allow yourself to take in information and you start thinking, hey, if you're a pitcher, hey, what would I throw here? Or, hey, how would I attack this situation? Or, hey, what's my goal? Am I trying to get a ground ball? How would I get that ground ball? Things like that. If I'm an outfielder, hey, if I was playing right field and the ball was hit to me here, what would I do with the baseball? Or things like that. Like, the more you can just kind of like let the game teach you by kind of like observing and watching and kind of thinking like, hey, what would I do? The more that's going to shine when you get an opportunity to go play. Obviously, that gets a little bit limited in a showcase setting where you're always playing with one out or whatever it may be. But at the same time, again, if you have those instincts, they're going to show up. You don't feel like you have to force that. Like, they're going to show up. And if you don't have them, like I said, watch baseball and watch a lot of baseball, and don't watch baseball because you want to see, X, Y, and Z player, do really well, or, because you want to watch this team beat that team. Like, watch baseball for the sport that it is, and just let it speak to you.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it's one thing that I tell kids to watch college baseball of all different levels for some of the same reasons, right? Like, watching the game is going to help you get better at the game. And I do think personally that there's a difference between watching on TV versus watching live, because seeing the whole field, you're seeing what the right fielder's doing on a play that like you wouldn't get to see in the frame of the TV. So I think that like watching baseball live when you can is also something I recommend. But watch college baseball of all levels. Go watch the College World Series. Those games are super fun. Watch Big East TV. Watch the live stream for Denison. Watch a lot of different things, because I think that a lot of kids that we talk to don't necessarily have a sense of what different levels of college baseball look like, right? What does baseball at Georgetown look like versus baseball at William & Mary versus baseball at Stanford versus baseball at Columbia, or versus baseball at Denison and St. Olaf, or whatever it is. So I think that like that's one thing that I always recommend. And it used to be really hard because the only college baseball on TV was the College World Series. But now with more and more things on live stream, I think that there's a really good opportunity for players to watch a lot of different stuff to kind of see what's going on there and learn the game, and also see what the game is like at some of their target schools.
Yeah, totally.
The there's a number of questions out there. I want to be cognizant of time, so I think we're going to take one more question. I know there are still other questions in there that I will follow up with in one-off and have conversations with over the next couple of days. What is the best way before a showcase, at a showcase, after a showcase, to express interest and connect with a coach?
Yeah. So it definitely depends on the setting, right? Like if you're at a camp setting, like a head first, or you're at a school's camp, and so that interaction is you permissible. Go up, shake hands. I don't think that you're going to have like the whole conversation right there. I mean, I don't. There's another recommendation, like don't come up into Coaches Connect and say, hey, what majors does Georgetown have? Like you can go search that.
Do some research. Yeah,
you can do some research, but having conversations obviously puts a face to the name. Again, have a little bit of feel and understanding that if we did just watch, 150 players in a short span of time, and we haven't even really had an opportunity to kind of like regroup ourselves in the notes and whatnot, I wouldn't say necessarily that you should go be looking for like a full, blown out evaluation from that standpoint. But certainly following up, via email is always going to be like Twitter DM or X DMs, and email. Like those are really good platforms to be able to follow up after an event. And again, if that does happen to be like the first email that you ever send to that school or to that coach, you can even put that in the header, so that there is like a natural like way of, oh, okay, like I remember that guy. He wore number 101 at the Southern California head for session 1, right? Like sending an email and following up is definitely a great way. But I do think that naturally that dialogue will just continue to flow as you get deeper into a process. And if you don't, have an interaction, maybe you forgot, maybe it just didn't happen or whatever, and you are passionate about playing there and you've watched, games on a TV and that you have the skill set and that you're better than the guys that you're seeing on that TV and you're dying to be a Hoya, come to our camp, and remind us, hey coach, hey Kate, great to see you. I was at that head first session 2 at in Los Angeles. I don't know if you remember me, but really enjoyed playing in front of you. Can't wait, for the rest of the weekend or whatever. Now, naturally, I'm going to go back to my notes. Like when I watch you play right now at camp, I'm now going to go back to my notes from head first session 2 in Los Angeles. And I'll be like, oh yeah, that kid he was solid. He looks really good right now. Now we're trending.
Step up. Now we're trending up. Yep. All right. Yeah. I lied. We're going to do one more question because I know we've talked a lot about the timing for 2026s and a bit for 2027s. I don't want to ignore the younger underclassmen because I know that they're, you don't want to ignore them, right? So when you think about 2028s, 2029s, like what should you be doing if you're before that August 1st cutoff date, if you're kind of pre-process at many of these schools, what are the things that they should be thinking about and focused on as 2028s and 2029s rising freshmen and sophomores?
Developing, play baseball, develop, figure out, if you can set goals and that, hey, I want to be this, what, like develop, work, play the game of baseball. I do not recommend, or my recommendation would not be that a ton of younger players be going and showcasing themselves nonstop, because you just got to develop. You got to continue to have a passion for the game, continue to learn the game, continue to grow and get better as an athlete yourself. But just spend time developing, spend time playing baseball, so that when it comes time to being in that process, you're ready for it. Now, the caveat that I will give to that is I will say, like, I'm not saying don't go to any showcases, because there is some truth to getting comfortable in that sort of setting. There is some truth to not, having as many nerves as you may have because you've been in that sort of setting. And, in the case where you may have, 50, 60, 70 sets of eyes on you, that naturally may feel a little bit more intimidating. So if you've done it, now you're a little bit more comfortable for the next time. And that may be the summer that, is more important for you, or whatever it may be. So there's a lot of truth to that. And there's a lot of truth to getting comfortable in that sort of, a showcase type setting, right? If you get 4 ground balls, hey, what are the skills that you're going to make sure that you show off, in your 3 to 4 ground balls, or, you get 2 throws to third, 2 throws to home as an outfielder. Hey, what am I going to make sure that I accomplish here in these, 4 throws that I get to spark interest so that coaches can go, watch me in the game, or just have a baseline set of notes that next year when they see me, they can go back on. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I would definitely not recommend that that's all you do. But I would also say it's not a bad thing to go to 1 or 2, just kind of get comfortable in that setting, so that when it does come time, you're just more comfortable with it.
Yeah. And the other piece that you touched on, where is exactly where my head went to, is like, okay, we've talked about kind of these developmental snapshots and assessing players over time. So if you're able to give an early snapshot of that, think about the development that you're going to show from being, if you're a 2028 attending a session this summer or this fall or something like that, what's the development physically and on the field that you're going to take before next summer and then in the next summer? And so the longer kind of runway you give coaches and the more different snapshots at different time periods you can give them, then as we've talked about, that kind of, then you're trending, as you said, Cape, right? Like then you're starting to demonstrate that escalation.
And it's the same too. Like if I go to, like this past spring, if I was going to a game to watch a 2026, right? Somebody that we're actively recruiting, we're in the mix for, and I'm at that game to watch him. Well, if you're that 2028 that's on the field, you may do something positive, you may whatever, showcase something in that game that now I'm like, maybe it's a school right down the street from us. And so I know that, hey, I know they got that guy. So I'm going to keep him in my back pocket so that when we get to that class, a few years from now, when we get to that class, I've now remembered him. And I remember, hey, what he looked like as a freshman, what he looked like as a sophomore. Not that I was going to that game to recruit him, right? I was going to the game to evaluate and watch, somebody a few classes higher. But that's still an opportunity, that you have to, again, whether it was good or bad, like move on from it. Like if it wasn't the way good, you're young, like develop next time. Good. Next time I see you, you're going to be better, right? When it comes time for your turn, you're going to be a better baseball player. But also if it's good, it's like, okay, great. Next time, like I'm going to keep working so that I can really be ready for that moment when the eyes did come to watch me.
Yeah. I love that kind of like ancillary exposure where you're like, okay, I'm not the focus right now. That doesn't mean I'm not getting on radars. That doesn't mean coaches aren't seeing me and aren't starting to track me, highlight my names, take a look at my Twitter feed for the video, whatever it is.
That's my favorite. Yeah. Those are my favorite recruiting stories when I don't even know about a guy and I go to a field to watch another guy and I end up pulling that name from it. Like those are my favorite recruiting stories because it's like, it feels like fate in a way, right? Like I didn't go there to watch that guy, but I'm like, wow, he's really good. Like I want to figure out what he's about.
I'm going to find that kid's email address.
Yeah. I'm going to find that kid's email address, make sure I get his transcripts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to find out if he's a good dude. Hey, I'm going to send Coach Thompson to go watch him at the next event. I'm going to get his schedule. I'm going to send Coach Thompson to the next event so he can watch him too. I think we're getting a sense of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a nice bow on it. We're gonna wrap there. I know we've taken a lot of time. So Coach Capen, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, with your thoughtfulness. I know few people better or even as good that we can talk to about the process. So really appreciate you taking your time and thank you for spending some time with us this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put in the chat. Yeah, Max, thanks for having me. I mean, I'm a big fan of everything that Head First stands for. Big Brennan Sullivan, love him. Big fan of all y'all. But I will send my email in the chat here. And so, it's on the website as well. So if anybody wants to, look back or you missed this or whatever, feel free to fire me an email or, if there's interest in Georgetown and you want to, fire off your info and video transcripts and all the things that we talked about, like definitely feel free. Again, I can't say enough about Head First. I can't say enough about how much we love what we do at Georgetown. And if you are somebody that's dying to be a Hoya and you're super passionate about it, I would love for you to reach out. I would love, for you to come to our camps and say hello and come compete in front of us. Because it really is, I mean, this is we have a passion for what we do. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Cape, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. We'll see you in a couple weeks in Long Island. See the Hoyas rocking the blue. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, for taking some time out of your night to learn a little bit more about recruiting. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll certainly stay in touch. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll be sending out this recording and start to clip it for Instagram, Twitter, that sort of stuff. So if you want to revisit some of this, you'll have the chance on our blog and on our social media feeds. So take a look there. Thank you, everybody, for staying with us, for joining us.